Imagine the mighty Roman Empire, an ancient superpower, its influence stretching from the windswept coasts of Britain to the sun-baked sands of Egypt. Rome's legions marched in perfect formation, their armor gleaming, their banners fluttering in the Mediterranean breeze. For centuries, they seemed invincible, conquering all who stood in their path. These legions were the backbone of Rome's might, feared across continents, their discipline and training unmatched by any foe. The world trembled at the thunder of their boots, but in the year 9 AD, a catastrophe unfolded that would haunt Rome for generations. Deep within the shadowy forests of Germania, 3 entire legions, nearly 20,000 of Rome's finest soldiers, marched to their doom. They vanished into the mist, swallowed by the ancient woods, never to return. The news struck Rome like a thunderbolt. Emperor Augustus, the most powerful man in the world, was shattered. He reportedly wandered his palace in despair, tearing his robes and crying out, "Quinctilius Varus, give me back my legions." The loss was personal, and it shook the very foundations of the empire. The Battle of the Teutoburg Forest was not just a defeat, it was a total annihilation. Rome's proud army was wiped out, their standards lost, their honor stained. Trained for open fields and grand maneuvers, the Roman soldiers found themselves trapped in a nightmare. The tangled woods turned their discipline into a deadly weakness as confusion and terror spread through the ranks. The Germanic tribes, united under a cunning leader named Arminius, a man who had once served Rome and knew its tactics intimately, used the forest as their greatest weapon. They struck from the shadows, vanishing before the Romans could regroup. This was more than a lost battle. It was a turning point in history. The defeat sent shockwaves through the empire, forcing Rome to rethink its ambitions. Rome's dream of expanding its borders all the way to the Elbe River died in that haunted forest. The vision of a Romanized Germania vanished overnight. From that moment on, the Rhine, not the Elbe, became the empire's permanent frontier. The river marked the edge of Roman civilization, a line they would never cross again. The battle defined the future shape of Europe, creating a cultural and political divide that would last for centuries. The echoes of that day still shape the continent we know today. Even the greatest empires, it turns out, have their limits. The forest claimed Rome's dreams, leaving only ruins and memories behind, a stark reminder that no power is truly eternal. At the center of this disaster was Publius Quinctilius Varus, a seasoned Roman administrator from a noble family. He'd governed Africa and Syria, earning a reputation as a strict, effective bureaucrat. Rome thought Germania needed an administrator, not a conqueror, so Varus was sent. But his heavy-handed rule clashed with the fiercely independent Germanic tribes. He imposed Roman law and taxes, fueling resentment and anger. Varus's greatest mistake was trusting Arminius, a Germanic prince who had served Rome and seemed the perfect ally. Varus saw Arminius as a friend and advisor, never suspecting betrayal. But Arminius was secretly plotting against him, setting the stage for disaster. That misplaced trust would lead Varus and his legions straight into a deadly trap. Rome's ambitions in Germania were driven by strategy, security, and pride. Conquering Germania Magna would shorten the empire's border and reduce defense costs. The region's tribes had raided Roman lands, and Rome wanted revenge for past humiliations. Romanization began. Roads, forts, and towns sprang up, and local chieftains were offered citizenship. But the Germanic tribes valued their freedom and traditions. Roman laws and taxes were seen as oppression, not civilization. The new roads made invasion easier, and Roman judges undermined tribal leaders. Resentment grew, and the stage was set for rebellion. All that was needed was a leader to unite the tribes. That leader was about to emerge. Arminius, son of a Cherusci chieftain, was Rome's perfect double agent. Raised in Rome, he learned their tactics, earned citizenship, and became a trusted advisor to Varus. But behind the mask of loyalty, Arminius was uniting the tribes against Rome. He knew he couldn't beat the legions in open battle, so he devised a trap. Arminius convinced Varus to march his army off the safe road into the Teutoburg Forest, claiming a rebellion needed crushing. Meanwhile, Germanic warriors prepared the battlefield, a narrow path, a hidden earthen wall, and a killing ground. The Romans, trusting Arminius, marched straight into the ambush. The forest, the mud, and the rain would become the Germans' greatest allies. Arminius's plan was simple, brilliant, and utterly ruthless. Varus never saw it coming. The trap was set. The Roman column, 3 legions strong and thousands of men deep, marched into the heart of the Teutoburg Forest, slow, stretched out, and dangerously vulnerable. The towering trees pressed in on all sides, the path ahead winding and narrow, forcing the once mighty Roman formation to break into a long, thin line. Suddenly, a violent storm broke overhead, drenching the soldiers and turning the forest floor into a quagmire of mud and tangled roots. The rain hammered down, soaking armor and cloaks, blurring vision and muffling the sounds of movement. Wagons bogged down in the thick mud, horses slipped and panicked, and soldiers struggled to keep their footing. The once disciplined ranks began to unravel as men tried desperately to push carts and rescue supplies, their shouts lost in the storm. Amid the confusion, Arminius and his fellow Germanic nobles quietly slipped away from the Roman column, claiming they would gather local allies. In truth, they vanished into the trees, joining their waiting warriors hidden in the shadows. Without warning, a deadly storm of spears rained down from a hidden rampart above. The Romans, caught in the open and unable to see their attackers, fell in droves as the sky seemed to come alive with flying death. Germanic warriors burst from the trees, howling their war cries, and struck the exposed Roman flank with ferocious speed. The forest itself seemed to come alive with enemies, attacking from every direction. The Romans, caught off guard and hemmed in by the dense woods, couldn't form their classic defensive lines. Their training and discipline, so effective on open ground, were useless here. Fighting was brutal and chaotic, the forest echoing with screams, the clash of steel, and the cries of the wounded. Visibility was poor, and friend and foe alike became lost in the confusion. As night fell, the battered Romans tried desperately to regroup, forming a rough camp in the darkness. Exhausted, soaked, and terrified, they huddled together, knowing the enemy was still out there. But the first day had already cost them dearly. Hundreds lay dead or missing, and morale was shattered. The survivors could only wonder what horrors the next day would bring. The forest, once a place of shelter, had become a death trap, a labyrinth of mud, rain, and lurking enemies. The legion's famed discipline, the pride of Rome, was no match for the treacherous terrain and the cunning ambush. Order gave way to panic and fear. For the Romans, the nightmare was only beginning. The darkness of the forest promised only more terror to come. At dawn, Varus and his men realized the full horror. They were trapped, betrayed, and surrounded. Desperate, they burned their baggage to move faster, abandoning supplies and hope. The Germanic tribes shadowed them, launching relentless hit-and-run attacks. Every clearing was a gauntlet, every shadow a threat. Roman discipline held, but exhaustion and fear gnawed at the men. The rain and mud never let up. Morale crumbled. By nightfall, the survivors huddled in a makeshift camp, surrounded by enemy war cries. The march had become a funeral procession. Each hour, their numbers dwindled. The forest closed in, and hope faded. Survival seemed impossible. On the third day, the Romans entered the deadliest part of the trap, a narrow corridor between a fortified hill and a vast bog. Germanic warriors unleashed a barrage of missiles from above, then charged into the packed Roman ranks. The command structure collapsed. Chaos reigned. Varus and his officers, facing capture, chose suicide over humiliation. Leaderless, the Romans fought in desperate pockets, but most were cut down or drowned in the bog. The slaughter was total. 3 legions wiped out, their eagle standards captured. A handful escaped to tell the tale. Most perished or were taken captive. The forest was silent, littered with the dead. Rome's greatest military disaster was complete. The dream of Germania Magna died with them. The Rhine would be Rome's final frontier. The empire would never forget. The aftermath was brutal. Survivors sacrificed others enslaved, and the dead left unburied as a warning. The captured eagle standards became symbols of Germanic triumph. Rome was thrown into panic. Augustus feared invasion and sent Tiberius to secure the frontier. Emergency measures gripped the city, and the defeat was felt as an existential threat. Rome sought revenge. Germanicus led punitive campaigns, recovered 2 eagles, and buried the dead. But the cost of conquest was too high. Tiberius ordered a retreat to the Rhine, abandoning dreams of Germania Magna. The heavily fortified Rhine became Rome's permanent border. The Teutoburg disaster changed imperial policy forever. The wound to Rome's pride would never fully heal. The Battle of the Teutoburg Forest was more than just a military defeat for Rome. It was a turning point that would shape the destiny of an entire continent. In the year 9 AD, deep within these misty woods, 3 Roman legions were ambushed and destroyed by Germanic tribes led by Arminius, a man who had once served Rome himself. The shockwaves from this battle rippled far beyond the forest, changing the course of European history forever. Rome's relentless expansion was halted at the banks of the Rhine. The empire, which had seemed unstoppable, suddenly found its limits. Germania remained unconquered, its people free to preserve their own languages, beliefs, and traditions. The river became not just a physical barrier, but a cultural one, separating 2 worlds. This border would become a defining line between the Latin-speaking West and the Germanic East, shaping the identities of future nations like France and Germany. The echoes of this division can still be seen in the languages, customs, and even the political boundaries of Europe today. The legacy of the battle echoed through the centuries. It influenced the eventual decline and fall of the Roman Empire, and set the stage for the rise of new powers and kingdoms across the continent. Medieval castles, bustling cities, and even modern European nations all bear the imprint of that fateful clash. Arminius, once a forgotten figure, was later celebrated as a symbol of German freedom and unity. His story inspired generations, especially during times when the idea of a united Germany seemed like a distant dream. Although his vision of a united Germania faded with time, the legend of Arminius endured. He became a reminder of the power of resistance and the enduring spirit of a people determined to remain free. The battle stands as a powerful lesson in the limits of even the greatest empires and the dangers of underestimating those who fight for their homeland. It shows how strategy, terrain, and determination can overcome sheer numbers and might. At its heart, it's a story of betrayal. Arminius turning against his Roman allies, of cunning strategy, and of the high cost of arrogance. The consequences of those choices would be felt for generations. Even today, the echoes of those 3 bloody days in the forest still shape Europe's borders, cultures, and identities. The scars of the past are woven into the very fabric of the continent. The Teutoburg Forest remains a silent witness, a living testament to a battle that truly changed the world, reminding us how a single event can alter the fate of nations and the course of history itself.